Hello guys, welcome back in our economics module. This is our module number 7. People who are joining new, I request them to watch previous sessions so that whichever topics we'll cover later on, they won't have any confusion. Okay, so I hope you all are safe in this global pandemic and preparing for your respective government examinations by staying at home. This is the best time what you got in this crisis period, whosoever are preparing for government examinations, because we always complain that we don't get time or special time for the preparation of these examinations. And also people who are working, they never get time from their daily routine so that they can prepare for the examinations, right? So use this time to its fullest and try to cover as much as you can in this crisis period or the lockdown period what you got in your hand at this moment. Alright, so without wasting more time, let's start with our microeconomics module. My name is Ninath Pandit and I am the faculty at Savarkar IAS Study Circle. Till previous session, I introduced you about the macroeconomics. This is our fourth chapter of index part. I hope you remember this. And we have covered or we have started the terminologies part in macroeconomics. There were 6 subtopics of macroeconomics which I introduced to you, and we are doing with terminologies. All right. Till previous session we discussed 8 terminologies. We have 13 more to discuss. Okay, so let's start with the terminologies part of macroeconomics. We covered resources, final goods, consumer durable, consumption goods, capital goods, also circular flow in the economy, and one more thing what we have covered about all these basic capital goods, consumption good and final good, that is the depreciation value. So we discussed these terminologies. This total 8 terminologies we discussed in previous session. So today let's start with the 9th one. The first or the 9th one is the gross investment in the economy. Gross investment in economy. Okay, it's very simple term to understand. I hope you remember about capital goods. What do you mean about capital goods? The goods which will generate some value in future. They won't be consumed in a day or in a year. They won't be consumed in a small period of time. They'll be producing something, some valuable commodity they'll be producing. So gross investment in the economy, which means the capital goods which are built by government or by any entity and which are helpful for common people over a period of time, over a long period of time. To give you a simple example, our bridges is the gross investment, is the investment from our side, because bridge we construct, it's not going to collapse in a year, right? It's going to last for approximately for 15 to 20 years, and again we'll maintain it or again we'll repair it so that it can be again useful for more 10 years or whatsoever time span it have. Alright, or another example is train. It's also a gross investment. It's going to give us some return. It's not going to get consumed in a small period. So these buildings, bridges, trains, colleges, universities, so these are our gross investment which are producing some valuable commodities, can be in a quantity or can be in a quality also. Okay, can be in a both terms, not only in numbers, only in a alphabetical, only in a numerical numbers, like some amount they're going to produce. Can be in a quality or can be in a quantity also. Okay, so this simple term, this is what is called as gross investment in our economy. Okay, the next is stock investment. Stock investment. Okay, and with respect to this, we'll understand one more terminology, that is fixed investment. Okay. Now first let's understand what is stock investment. just have a simple example. It is related with the current scenario also. Currently this lockdown period is going on, alright. So you have uncertainty about lot of essential commodities which you are using in your house. So what many people are trying, they are trying to stock whatever is there in the market, so that they don't know if they'll get the supply of these commodities in the later period if the lockdown extends. The best example is Maggi, right? I hope you all are having a huge amount of stock of Maggi in your house. So this is the stock investment. What you're doing the stocking. Now let's understand this this example with respect to macroeconomics, or in the bigger picture. Any company or firm, for example a clothing industry or a clothing factory, okay, whatever raw material they have, raw material which means the cotton will be the raw material for clothing, to give you example, okay, whatever raw material they have, or a semi-finished goods or final good, the final good will be a t-shirt or shirt, whatever it is they are producing, okay. So whatever these raw materials, semi-finished goods or final goods they have in a life, in a year, that is called as their investment, okay. So this can be, the stock investment can be of two types. The one is opening stock and other one is closing stock, okay. So opening stock will be in the initial phase, so 1 January of a year, the first day of a year, okay. The closing stock will be counted at 31st December, okay. Now suppose the opening stock of X factory, of X clothing factory was at 80, okay. They have 80 t-shirts with them, okay. By the end of, they'll manufacture or they'll produce more t-shirts in a year, obviously, right? They'll be working for a year. So suppose the closing stock becomes 60, okay. So this is less than 20, the closing stock is less than opening stock, okay. So this means that whenever there is a closing stock is less than the opening stock, we call it as disinvestment. Disinvestment, okay. Disinvestment means, you might have heard this terminology various times in government companies also. Like recently, if any of you following the government policies, LIC, government is going to do the disinvestment of LIC through public, which means they are going to sell their shares to public, and government will lose some of its ownership, not completely, okay. So this is called as disinvestment. So they have reduced their quantity, so we call it as a negative investment or disinvestment. Now suppose if closing stock, now opening stock was 80 and closing stock, they have manufactured more clothes and their sale was less than it would have been as compared to their production, okay. So their closing stock becomes 100. So there is more 20, addition of 20 in their opening stock, addition of 20 in their closing stock, okay, than the opening stock, which is called as stock investment, okay. So this is their investment whenever the closing stock is more than opening stock, okay. I hope you remember, this is a very easy concept. This is disinvestment whenever the closing stock is less than the opening stock, which means they have sold their products and they have less quantity with them, the manufacturing unit. And whenever they have closing stock more than their opening stock, which means they have more quantity, right? So which is called as stock investment, okay. Fixed investment means that whatever this manufacturing unit will require some machinery. We have understood about durable goods, consumer durables. What were the consumer durables? These were the commodities which will last for a long period. So the machineries which are used by manufacturing units, which is useful for the stock investment, these machineries, these durable goods are called as fixed investment, Okay, I hope it's easy to understand. So the total investment of a company, which means that their stock investment can be a negative or positive. Okay, stock investment plus their fixed investment. Okay, so this is company's total investment. Any manufacturing unit's total investment is their stock investment plus fixed investment. Okay, I hope this is easy to understand. Let's move to the next terminology, that is absolute advantage. Now absolute advantage by definition means that if any individual, like any individual person, okay, if any individual, any company or any country, if they are producing any commodity or any goods at a lower price per unit as compared to some another entity or any another individual, any another country or any other company. Okay, so whenever they will produce a particular good at a lower price per unit as compared to any other person or country, then that person will enjoy the absolute advantage. Okay, understand with a very simple example. In India we have railways, local trains, okay, we have metros also, okay, but local trains are providing a very cheap transport as compared to metro. So local train is enjoying absolute advantage, correct? Because metro can't provide 5 rupees or 10 rupees, within 5 or 10 rupees fare they'll provide the travel as compared to railway is providing. Suppose railway is providing in 5 rupees, railway is providing 12 kilometer travel route, and metro is providing in 5 rupees will be 5 kilometer or 3 kilometer. Okay, so railway will be enjoying absolute advantage with respect to metro in transportation area. Let's have another example. We discussed in types of economies, that is our lecture number 3, about communist or state economy. Okay, so China enjoys absolute advantage with respect to labor. Why? Because in China there is a communism. State controls all means of production 100%, and whatever labor also they have, it is controlled by state, right? So state government decides at what price labor will be given. As they have largest population, state government gives cheap labor. All right. So in India, manufacturing units like Apple, BMW or Volkswagen, okay, they won't enjoy this labor advantage, because if they are getting cheap labor in China, obviously they will prefer China as compared to India, right? So China as a country is enjoying the absolute advantage with respect to labor. Okay, the same way with the Gulf countries which have ample amount of oil reserves, right? So any country, any individual or any company, if they are providing any commodity or good in a lower price as compared to any other, then they'll enjoy the absolute advantage. I hope you understood about the example of railway and Chinese labor advantage. Okay, let's move to the next terminology, that is perfect competition. Later on we'll be discussing about monopoly and oligopoly. Okay, so about perfect competition, whenever there are more sellers in a market, then there will be a perfect competition in the commodity. Which means, just understand with the example, whenever you are going in a market to purchase mobile, you have various options in front of you, right? You have Samsung, you have Nokia, you have MI, you have iPhone, then various other options currently in the market, right? So whenever there are more sellers in the market, which means there will be a competition for pricing. You might be remembering about the Adam Smith's theory, which we discussed in Capitalistic Economy, where he stated about one concept, that is invisible hand of market, right? So market will derive the demand and supply of particular commodity, which we discussed in our Adam Smith capitalistic theory, right? So the same way, whenever there are more sellers in the market, there will be a price competition, obviously, right? If Samsung trying to give you a mobile phone for cheaper price as compared to Nokia, what you will do, and with the same features what Nokia is providing, you will try to go for Samsung one, right? So these competition, these many sellers will be useful or will be helpful for ultimately buyer, right? We will be ultimately benefited by their competition, right? So this is called as perfect competition. The example is mobile, or you can get another example, that is cigarettes. There are various other cigarettes in the market. It's the demerit good, no need to worry, but still there are various cigarettes. So this is one of the example of perfect competition, because the price will be decided. Okay, monopoly, the next concept. Monopoly, which means there is a single seller of that particular good, and he'll enjoy a complete authority of that particular pricing of that particular good and selling of that particular good. This is called as monopoly, single seller market. Okay, simple example, just now we discussed in absolute advantage about railways. Railways enjoy the monopoly in the market. There is no competition for railway, right? We don't have any other service provider who is providing the same service like railways. So a railway is enjoying the monopoly in the market, right? Another example will be Google. Google have we don't have software like Google at this moment in the market, which will provide us same facilities like Google. Another example, Microsoft, Adobe Reader. All right. So these are the perfect monopoly examples where these companies enjoy the complete advantage of market. All right. The next one is oligopoly. Oligopoly means there are not many sellers in the market like perfect competition. We have many sellers. Likewise condition is not there in the market, but there are handful of sellers, like 2 or more, 2, 3 or 4, not more than that. But there is a possibility that these 2, 3 or 4 sellers, whatever they have, they can collude, they can form a union, or they can combine together and can decide price in the market. So it's the bad thing again, right? So government must have check on these handful of sellers. Otherwise, there will be a price driving mechanism for the market, so that the market will be ultimately in the disadvantage. Market will enjoy the disadvantage, and market will not be benefited. The best example is electricity. Like we have Reliance Electricity, we have Adani Electricity, we have Tata in some areas, right? So there are handful of sellers, but buyers are many. So they should not collude, they should not combine, right? Otherwise they can decide price by themselves and they can make profit, and consumer will not be benefited, right? So there are a handful of sellers, but government must have intervention. Government must intervene in their affairs, in their working, right? Otherwise there will be a high price in the market for those commodities. I hope you understood about this perfect competition, monopoly and oligopoly, right? Let's move to the next terminology, that is revenue deficit. 16th one, revenue deficit, or surplus also we call it as. Deficit or surplus can be a deficit or can be a surplus. Okay, we'll understand it. Next terminology which we are going to understand after that, that is capital deficit or surplus. Surplus, and the 18th one is fiscal deficit or surplus. Okay, so these three terminologies are budgetary terminologies. In budget we use these terminologies. Budget means the government gives budget every year, that is in February. So in that budget, government uses these terms. Okay, so let's understand about revenue deficit or surplus first. It is divided into two parts. The one is receipts and other one is expenditure. Okay, now what is revenue receipts? Okay, this is revenue receipt and this is revenue expenditure. Let's understand, I'll tell you about this part. From these two parts we come to deficit and surplus. Revenue receipts means whenever government receives money through taxes, that is either a direct tax or indirect tax. Okay, direct tax means it is deducted from your salary directly to the government. Alright, indirect tax means the GST what we pay at this moment. GST as a separate topic we are going to cover in macroeconomics Indian part. Okay, so we pay taxes on various commodities. This is the indirect tax. Again, various manufacturing units, they pay tax, they pay GST to government. Shopkeepers, they pay GST to government, which is ultimately paid by a consumer anyhow, but still they pay to government. So these are the taxes, these are various taxes what government receive. Custom duties on airport we get. Okay, import export duties, again government receive. This is a one kind of tax again. Okay, so whatever taxes, all form of taxes, whenever government receives, is calculated in revenue receipt, or it is combined in revenue receipt. Okay, the next one is expenditure. Now whatever money government, suppose if government gets 100 rupees from taxes, okay, now government expends that amount on some part, some areas. Now where government expends? Salaries of various government servants is given by this 100 rupees. 100 rupees, which means I am giving you the hypothetical example, alright, is given by revenue receipts. Salaries of government employees, any police servant, government employee, railway employees, okay, ministers, MP, MLA, their salary is given by these revenue receipts to government, in their expenditure part. So salaries is very important part of this revenue expenditure. Okay, I hope you understand. So receipts government get from taxes, they expense into salaries of their employees, government employees. So suppose if government gives salary to their employees 110 rupees. Okay, so government received receipts of 100 rupees but gave amount that is 110 rupees, which means 100 is receipt minus 110, which will give us minus 10. So government is in the deficit of 10 rupees. Government is in the minus of 10 rupees, right? So this is what is called as, this 10 rupees is called as revenue deficit. Getting the point? Now suppose salaries reduced down to 90, or you can increase the tax also. That's the reason why government is trying to make all people into the tax system. Okay, you might have seen various unorganized sector in our economy. Unorganized sector means the local vendors who are not registered with government but still they are selling. So they are not providing any GST to government. Okay, so government is getting less amount in taxes, but still they have to expense on poorer to poor section, right? But still they are not getting tax from their side. Alright, so tax can increase or expenditure can decrease anyway. Okay, so if 100 rupees and taxes expenditure reduced to 90, so government will have 10 rupees in their hand. So this time we can call it as a revenue surplus. Okay, these terms what we are understanding now will be useful for you in the later part, that is Indian economics, Indian macroeconomic development, where we are going to understand what is government's revenue deficit, revenue surplus, capital deficit, capital surplus, etc. Alright, so this is what is called as revenue deficit or surplus. I hope you understood this part. Let's move to next one, that is capital. Again in capital also we have the same thing, capital receipts and capital expenditure. Now what is government's capital receipts? Capital, which means what? You understood about this capital word, capital goods, okay, which means it is producing some investment, it's kind of investment, okay. So what will come in capital receipts? understand in a simple term, receipts means incoming, expenditure means outgoing, right? So in receipts, what will come? If government has given loan to some country, suppose government has given loan to Pakistan, which government has not given anyhow, but still in hypothetical condition, government has given loan to Pakistan. So whatever interest Pakistan will pay to government, which ultimately they won't if they take loan, okay? So government, whatever interest government gets from Pakistan, that amount will come into the receipt part. That is the interest paid on the capital given by. Again, if government has invested their money in some business, government also have various companies, okay? So whatever profit government gets from those businesses will come into capital receipts, right? So whatever profit government get on their investment will come in the receipt part of capital, okay? Now what will be the government expenditure? Again, if government is providing any capital to someone, if loan is government is providing loan, if government creating some institute, if government building bridges, that is again a capital, right? If government, that's the, and again government get toll tax from people, that toll will come in the receipt part, right? Then government creating any institute, government creating any college, okay? So this will come into capital expenditure, right? So that we call it as a investment again. And what will be capital deficit or capital surplus? The same way how we discussed about revenue deficit and revenue surplus. If 100 rupees is here, 100 rupees is expense, then we have no deficit or surplus, it will be at a balanced thing. Again, if it's, so how we will come to a formula, that is capital receipts minus capital expenditure. If it's in negative, will be in a deficit. If it's a positive, then we have a capital surplus. I hope this is clear, right? Now if you understood this capital deficit, capital surplus and revenue deficit, revenue surplus, it's easy to understand fiscal deficit and surplus, okay? Fiscal deficit or surplus. People who are following various government policies, they might have remembered that government came out with policy that they want to curtail fiscal deficit to 3%, 3.5%. Okay, so fiscal deficit in simple term, that is total receipts minus total expenditure. Obviously we'll be deducting expenditure from receipts only, right? So total receipt means what? Total receipt will comprise of revenue receipts and capital receipt, right? When we combine these two, revenue receipts and capital receipts, we get total receipts of a government, right? Government will be getting money through revenue, first part, and the second part is through capital, right? And then total expenditure will be again means that revenue expenditure and capital expenditure, right? When we deduct this, if the amount is in negative, which means we have a fiscal deficit. If the amount is in positive, we are in a fiscal surplus. Okay, so understand these concepts. We require these concepts when we are understanding, we are going to understand the next chapter, that is GDP, GNP and NNP. Okay, currently, to give you a simple example, currently government have the fiscal deficit of 3.5%. Due to this lockdown period, government might borrow more amount, more money in international market. So government will have more borrowing. Now understand, if it comes into negative, which means suppose total receipts are 100 and total expenditure is 120, so government is in minus 20. So minus 20 is not the amount somewhere, right? This is not type of currency that minus 20 currency you have. So this 20 rupees is government borrowed from somewhere. This is government's loan. This is what we understand from fiscal deficit. So when we say fiscal deficit is of 3.5%, which means whatever GDP we have or whatever government's expenditure and receipts we have, the total amount we have, that amounts 3.5% government has borrowed. So whenever we'll reach to fiscal 0%, which means total receipts and total expenditure when we minus, this amount is coming down to 0. Okay, I hope you understood this part. Alright, now let's move to the next terminology. Last three terminologies we have, that is balanced budget, balance of trade and capital fight. Okay, so balanced budget is very simple terminology. As you understood about the fiscal deficit and fiscal surplus, if government does not have any deficit or surplus, there is no deficit of government or there is no surplus, which means the government, the budget is balanced one, which means whatever receipts government is getting and whatever expenditures government is doing is getting balanced. If 100 rupees is government's receipt and 100 rupees is only the government's expenditure, which means there is no deficit for the government, neither there is a surplus for the government. Okay, the next is balance of trade. Okay, the balance of trade is again divided into two parts, that is trade deficit and trade surplus. We have again two terminologies, that is export and import. Export means what? Whatever manufacturing units India have, if they send, suppose India have Indian mangoes are very famous outside. So India is exporting mangoes to various countries. So that is India's export. India also have lot of pharmaceutical manufacturing companies. In this COVID-19 pandemic, hydrochloric tablets government exported to various countries because Indian pharmaceutical manufacturing companies are manufacturing ample amount of tablets in India. Okay, so they have the capability to export it. Okay, later on, import means whatever we are taking from another countries, from outside. Okay, so if export minus import is coming into negative, which means we have trade deficit. Correct? Which means we are doing more import as compared to our export. Suppose export, if we are doing 100 rupees ka export we are doing and import we have of 90 rupees or we have import of 110 rupees, then only we can get the negative amount, right? Then only we will get negative amount, which means our import is more. We are dependent on various countries for various commodities, and our export is not as comparable to our import. Okay. Then we have trade surplus when our export will be more than our imports. If export is 100 and import is of 90, we'll get 10 rupees positive, which is our trade surplus. Now why we are concentrating on export and import? The reason is whenever in international market you do export or import, the amount is paid in dollar, because dollar have the value. We discussed about how dollar got the value in international market and all that in our second module. I hope you remember that. Okay, so whenever we reduce down to $10, which means if we would have had $100 with us, now we have $90 because we paid $10 extra for trade and we are left out with less $10. Here if we are calculating, we have $10 left more. Okay, because our export is 100, whenever people do export, ultimately they are going to also pay by dollar. The other international companies, they are also going to pay us in dollar. So we are getting $10 extra as compared to previous one. So we are calling it as trade surplus. Okay, so this is what is called as balance of trade. Okay, the last terminology of macroeconomics, that is capital fight. I'll give you a quick example so that you can understand capital fight. There was a rumor 3 to 4 years back where ICICI Bank, they told ICICI Bank is going to become bankrupt. So people whosoever having their deposit in ICICI Bank felt that their money, they won't get their money back. Okay, so what they did, they went into bank, they started withdrawing the amount from bank. So if such condition happens, bank already have invested that whatever deposits they have already invested in some other areas by giving loans to companies or personal loans or home loans, bike loans, etc. through which they earn interest. Alright, so when people go on a huge quantity and they start withdrawing their deposits, bank don't have that amount in their hand to provide to provide money whatever they have deposited at a single instant. Okay, so such kind of scenario where people go and they start withdrawing money from financial institutions. Okay, the same way we discussed about Great Depression, in which people started withdrawing money from stock market. Okay, we discussed about Great Depression of 1929. People who have not seen that video, again I'll request them to go and watch that session of Great Depression. Okay, so people started withdrawing money from stock market in USA. So this scenario is called as capital fight, because there is no capital left with financial institutions. Okay, so this concept, this condition, this terminology is called as capital fight in the market. Okay, I hope you understood these 21 terminologies. We require these 21 terminologies in course of time to understand the macroeconomics. Here we end with our first chapter, the first sub-chapter of macroeconomics, that is terminologies. Next session is very important because it is a very important topic, that is quantitative measures of macroeconomics. In quantitative measures, we are going to understand about GDP, GNP, national income, also at the factory cost, market price, nominal GDP, real GDP, etc. So it's a very important chapter. So please stay tuned, stay healthy, and thank you very much.